Aisha?
Masuk, jangan pada. You start. Let's start.
Set. Masalah. Balik no? 3, 2, 1, action.
Good morning, our partners, the media, all of you here present. Good morning, our viewers. Welcome to yet another press conference by the Citizens Alliance. This is our third monthly press conference, as we've promised that we will be engaging you, the media, the citizens, on a monthly basis to discuss issues that are important to us Gambians and everybody that has an interest in Gambia. The wise people often say, ears that listen are common, but ears that hear are rare. We pray that all ears that are going to listen will hear what we say here and digest it and take it in good faith. We have several issues that we will be discussing this morning. And first on our list here is the issue of corruption in this country. It is an open secret that there are so many things happening in this country that are corrupt, that are not in the right place. So we'll want to highlight key issues that has to do with corruption in this country. The second is our marine resources. Again, this is an issue that has really been affecting the country and its people. We feel our marine resources are not being tapped into by the Gambians. The marine resources are not being utilized or being benefited by Gambians, so we want to talk on it. Also, we are aware of contracts that our government has signed with Senegal, with China, with the EU. We want to look into those things and see how beneficial those contracts are to Gambia and Gambians. The third we want to talk about also is a very, very burning issue for the past weeks or a month, the issue of economic. We also know about a meeting that was held, and our government requested for the extension of the economic forces in the Gambia, and not only extension, but transform them into a police force after the expiration of their term. Is it something that the Gambian wants? Is it good for Gambia? Is it beneficial for the Gambia? Is it really necessary? We will also look into that. Another thing, of course, as a political party that is of great interest to us is the issue of IEC and the new election bill. We want to also talk about it and look at where it is and where are we in terms of the election bill, in terms of timelines and where we're heading with that, knowing that elections is going to be in December this year. We will also talk about the deportation. A lot of our youths, a lot of our young ones are out there in the diaspora, specifically Germany. They're being deported. And it's a great concern to us and them out there, the ones that are in detention centers, the ones that have already been deported. We also want to look at that. And last on not the list is the issue of the coronavirus. A new letter, let me say, press release has been put out in terms of restrictions about coronavirus. I mean, why? And why not now than later? So we want to look at that and see the issues surrounding that. Also, vaccination. A lot of countries we know have right now rolled out vaccinations. Our numbers are increasing in the Gambia, we all know. But we've not heard anything our government telling us about vaccination in terms of timelines, if it will even happen. So we also want to look at that. All of this is just to put pressure on the government. As a political party, we are stakeholders. We want to hold the government to account and ensure that what needs to be done, the systems, the processes, the procedures are in place, that we have a smooth running government that will be beneficial to all stakeholders, to all Gambia, the whole of Gambia and Gambians as a whole. As a party, we think we need processes and procedures, not people and positions. Thus, we do this on a monthly basis to talk to you, talk to the people through you, the media, to get them informed. On that note, to delve into all these issues in detail, I will want to invite Dr. Ismaila Cisse, presidential candidate, flag bearer of the Citizens Alliance. Doctor?
Thank you. Thank you, Nene. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to see you once again to this our monthly press conference. Like Nene had said earlier, the purpose of the press conference is to engage Gambians through the media about our activities and our positions on certain or key policy issues. Not only our position, but also the solutions that we profile. How would we have done differently if we were in government today? Before I start, I'd like to wish all of you a happy Independence Day, even though it was yesterday. And to every Gambian, it's been 56 years since we had independence. And I think it's important we reflect on our successes as a nation and also our challenges and missed opportunities. I hope we all will do that. Now, when it comes to CA engagements, I'd like to brief you, the media, about what we've been doing since we last met. We embarked on a voter registration sensitization tour. The idea was to do it nationwide, and we are going to do that from here till mid-April. That is what we'll be doing. We started with North Bank. We finished North Bank, starting from Bara to the last village in Sabah, Sanjal. We are back now. We are doing combos, the combo South, combo East, the combo Centrals. Once we are done, we'll head back to CRR North, Lower River Region, CRR South, and then we'll finish West Coast as well. We'll do URR, we'll do KMC, and then we'll do Banjul. We think it's important for the citizens to understand the importance of voter registration and also voting. And it is imminent. Very soon the IEC will start the process. However, very little voter education or civic education has been done to explain to voters, one, the importance of getting a voter's card, the importance of voting, the process by which you could get the voter's card as well, and what you need to get the voter's card. Many people have the view, based on our findings, that you need only an ID card. If you don't have an identity card, you cannot register to vote, which for us is not the case. So the purpose of our tour is to highlight these issues to the people as to what is needed exactly in terms of the criteria, that you need an ID card. If you don't have an ID card, you can use a passport. If you don't have a passport, a birth certificate is equally valid. If you don't have a birth certificate, an attestation from the alcalo is also equally valid. And also the importance of it, because we've seen how voter turnout has been very low in the past years in the Gambia, which is not good for our democracy. We would want every citizen who is eligible to vote, who is a citizen, who is over 18 years of age, who is of sound mind, and who is able to register and vote. I think this is very important. This is the bedrock of our democracy. Even those who are outside of the country, in the diaspora, as long as you are a Gambian, no matter where you are in this world, you have to be able to vote. For us, this enfranchising Gambians is really bad for our democracy. So that was the purpose of our tour. Now, Nene mentioned that one of the key issues that we'll discuss today is the issue of corruption. Corruption is a big problem in this country. Recently, a report released on January 28 by CPI, that is CPI, Corruption Perception Index 2020. It says that Gambia is 102 least corrupt nation out of 180 countries. What does this mean? It means we have dropped from 96 now to 102, which is back from 2019. So there has been no improvement insofar as our corruption indicators are concerned. So we've dropped the ladder a bit. Now, this presents a very gloomy picture about corruption in this country. With the Gambia consistently scoring 37 points over the past 3 years, the country continues to be ranked among the most corrupt countries in the world. And what baffles us is that we have not seen any or heard any strategy, any coherent strategy by this government to fight corruption. Obviously, why is this the case? Because there have been many allegations of corruption in the Gambia and nothing has been done about it. One of the allegations are, and also the government has not been serious in fighting corruption, because we have seen how they've appointed people back into the system who have a history of aiding and abetting corruption in the past regime, as established by the Janneh Commission. The Janneh Commission in 2019 published 1,600-page report. They published the names of people who helped Janneh, allegedly helped Janneh to pilfer public resources. Now, one of the recommendations was to reprimand some, to warn some, to suspend some, and to dismiss some. But some who are supposed, they are never reprimanded. Some are still back in the system, holding critical positions. So it means the government had failed to implement the Janneh Commission recommendations. But the lowest score for this administration, Barrow's administration, has to do with its lack of transparency and alleged widespread public sector corruption. In 2020, there are reports that the Gambian leader imported 23 Toyota Hilux 4x4 vehicles and a couple of buses for his party, the NPP. It was claimed that all duties were paid on those, even though we could not reveal, or they could not reveal the sponsors of those vehicles. I mean, you bring in 23 vehicles, which are very expensive vehicles, costing in the millions of dollars, with buses for the party, yet the source of that funding is not known. So the lack of transparency around all these things really affected Gambia's standing insofar as corruption is concerned. Also related to the Janneh Commission is the criticism of the sale of Jammeh's assets, which were not very transparent. I think the government should really tell us exactly about every Jammeh's assets. Public, we should know what assets were sold, the prices they were sold, and who bought them, so that at least the public knows exactly what happened to Jammeh's assets. Also, last year, an audit into state-owned enterprises, these are GRA, Gambia Ports Authority, Social Security, Gamtel, NAWEC, GNPC, and so on and so forth, was done by the British firm called Ernst & Young. Was completed, but the government refused to publish or do anything about it, at least to our knowledge. And very serious recommendations were put into that audit report, which even said that under normal circumstances, most of these state-owned companies should have been insolvent by now because of the way they are run. So another issue that also made Gambia to have a poor standing when it comes to the Corruption Perception Index has to do with the perpetuating, like the government perpetuating the same lack of transparency and environmental destruction and theft in our mining sector. Investigations revealed that the government gave a black sand mine contract to one of the founders of the president's political party. And what they are doing is to indiscriminately destroy the environment. Even though the Janneh Commission had recommended that the government put a moratorium on all mining activities and do a scientific study to establish damage done to the mining sector and rehabilitate accordingly, but yet they continue giving licenses for mining. Meanwhile, also another issue was had to do with NAWEC. NAWEC gave notification in September 2020 of its intention to award TBEA, it's a Chinese company that deposited, to give them a multi-million-dollar contract under its Gambia electricity restoration and modernization project. However, coincidentally, the same company was the one that deposited $35 million into the First Lady's account. And then a couple of months later, the same company won a contract with NAWEC. And by the end of October, it was also revealed that there is major corruption in the Gambia's fisheries sector. I think we all heard about the audio that was out about how money was received from moving from the permanent secretary to the minister. Even though the police were investigating, yet no report on that. We're interested to know exactly how far with those. But the most topical of all these issues, these malpractices, financial malpractices, and lack of transparency, has to do with the management of the COVID-19 funds. Funds were disbursed. A lot of money came into the country to fight COVID-19. For example, $850 million of relief package for the vulnerable communities, and $750 million was allocated to the Ministry of Health. The government also contributed $100 million to the World Bank's $10 million for purchase of medical equipment from Turkey. Ambulances were among those. But the government now has refused to transparently reveal a breakdown of the expenditure on food aid, on allocation to the ministry, on the quarantine for the hotels, on everything. There is no breakdown as to how this money spent. There is no breakdown, and they are revealing to reveal that. What they have revealed is bulk expenditures, which really cannot tell us exactly how the money was spent. So therefore, even with this bulk expenditure, there are discrepancies in the report, which make us think that the government is hiding something. So what we have witnessed, in short, is that the purpose of the transition was to reform public institutions, to make them more transparent, to make them more accountable, to fight corruption and impunity. But what we have seen so far is, instead of reforming institutions, people are busy reforming themselves. And that is the tragedy. So, high-level corruption at high level, especially in office, at the higher level, where high-level officers, public officials, are benefiting from the perks of government to the detriment of junior officers, which we think should be looked at. So we urge the government to expedite the anti-corruption bill, so that we have an anti-corruption commission as soon as possible, to also expedite the Freedom of Information bill. So there's a Freedom of Information Act in the Gambia, so that journalists, politicians, students can go and get information from government without any hindrance. We also urge the government to appoint, because now the problem now with the fighting corruption, there is no special prosecution to fight corruption. The Auditor General will report, do their auditing, and take it to the police, give it to the police, and the police will say, well, we don't have, they don't have the capacity to try some of these corruption cases. So what we want the government to do is to appoint a special prosecution for corruption and give them sweeping powers to make sure that they fight corruption. One thing also that has happened is that since the 2016-27 audit reports have not been validated by the National Assembly. So we urge the National Assembly to, as soon as possible, validate the 2016-2017 audit report, but also finally for the government to implement to the fullest the Jane Commission recommendations. The next issue that we'll be talking about has to do with the environment and fishing, or marine resources, which we are really getting worried about. It's becoming a serious problem, especially over exploitation of our marine resources. There is ample evidence, research, showing that there has been a great decline in catches in Gambian fishes in terms of catch. The fisheries sector has also seen significant dwindling earnings for fishermen and traders. Now, we have to understand that fishing and related activities are a main source of income for many Gambians, hundreds of thousands of Gambians. And that is a problem. A recent study by FAO states that fish stocks in the Gambia are being overexploited. There has been a ban before, though. That is why they made a ban on industrial fishing in 2015. However, this ban was lifted when this new government came to power in 2017, and they issued 73 licenses to trawlers in 2018. In 2018 and 19, Gambia signed some very critical contracts with agreements with foreign powers to have access to our marine resources. One is what Senegal, they call reciprocal fishing agreement, allowing 15 industrial fishing vessels and at least 200 artisanal fishing canoes in our waters. In 2018, we also signed a 6-year agreement with the European Union, allowing their vessels to fish 3,300 tons of tuna and tuna-like species, as well as 750 tons of hake per year in our waters. In return, what would we get? 550,000 euros to develop fisheries capacity and improve government revenue. This is really sad. Now, what happens with the United Nations laws of the seas is that every country has what they call 200 nautical miles as an exclusive economic zone. That is, all economic activities from the baseline of your country, 200 nautical miles, is yours. So, but however, the country lacks the capacity, the Navy especially, to police all these 200 nautical miles because they don't have equipment. The best they can do is 60 miles. And that is why illegal fishing has been a problem in this country. Now, the gap in country surveillance means that trawlers can illegally operate in our waters, and they get away with it. So that is a serious problem. And for us, again, one of the things that is causing havoc in our marine industry is the so-called fish meal factories in Combo South. Gambia has 3 fish meal factories located in Sanyang, Katong, and Gunjur, and research has shown that these are major drivers of overfishing and illegal fishing in Gambia's territorial waters. So we urge the government to look into this. Even our river Gambia today, even though it is legal, they are given license, but this legal fishing is destroying our mangroves, it is destroying our marine resources. You see these big trawlers coming even within 9 nautical miles. And according to Gambian law, certain industrial vessels should not come within 9 nautical miles of our territorial waters because of the damage they can do. That is reserved only for small artisanal boats. But now they encroach into the 9 nautical miles. They go into the river Gambia, destroying our environment. I think the government should really look at that. The third issue that we need to discuss is the issue of ECOMIC. It's been a very contentious issue. Now, in their last heads of states meeting, ECOWAS decided to extend the mandate of ECOMIC for a period of 12 months up to December 2021, with also to transform the mission into a police mission after 2021. The police that will come from Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Ghana, and Senegal. These are the countries that will contribute to this police mission. We think that this is not a prudent idea, it's not a wise idea in the first place, and it is unfortunate that this will really undermine national security in this country. It will also undermine our sovereignty. It doesn't also make sense that Gambia is sending troops to keep the peace in other parts of the world like Darfur, and we are sending troops from countries that Gambia is more stable than. Bringing police from Ivory Coast and Togo, for me, is an insult to Gambia, because Gambia is much more stable than those countries democratically. And also the system is different. The Togolese police, the Senegalese police, and the Ivorian police are trained in the French way of doing policing. So for us, it doesn't really make sense to bring the police. I think what we think the government should do is to ensure that they find an exit strategy for ECOMIC. By doing what? They expedite the security sector reforms as soon as possible, make our security services more professional, they motivate our security services, they empower law enforcement officers. There are many officers that are toiling every day working for the police. Their promotions are pending. Some have been working in the service for 8-9 years without any promotion. That demotivates law enforcement officers. Their salaries are not very good. They lack equipment, basic equipment. In fact, one will ask, when was the last time the police got supplies of uniforms and basic equipment to do their work? I mean, for me, that should be the focus. Equip our police officers, empower them, train them, motivate them, and give security to them, and not bringing in foreign forces to come and police our country. For us, that doesn't really make sense. The fourth one has to do with the IEC and the electoral process. Still, we don't know what's happening. The silence is really scary. By now, we should know a new timetable. When should registration take place? When should be a possible referendum? But these things were left in limbo. And I think it's not good. This election year, we have almost 9 to 10 months to elections. And very little is being done. And the danger in that is that we'll start rushing things, and which is very dangerous. Because when you rush things, you don't do the things properly. And when things are not done properly, it has implications for the integrity of the entire process. And obviously, before registration, before referendum, before election, there should be civic education. Voter education should be done. I'm not hearing anything about voter education. I'm not hearing anything about civic education for registration. Deployment has to be done. Training has to be done for those who are going to take part in the registration. But they must be well trained, because this, like we've always said, and we'll say it again, this is going to be high stakes elections. It is not going to be any ordinary elections, high stakes elections. Therefore, everything should be perfect and right. Everything should be well planned and methodical. We cannot allow haphazard things to be done in such an important elections. We have to train staff who are going to do the registration. We are going to deploy them. And we have not seen anything that is being done along those lines. So what's going to happen? We will wait until 3 months before election and you start rushing things and doing things haphazardly, undermining the entire process, and which we think is really dangerous. So what we also want when it comes to the election bill also, we've heard that the minister has been given the authority to take it to parliament with us, with all the political stakeholders, so we know exactly what is being taken to parliament. Because as far as we are concerned, there were 3 different copies circulating around. The one the IEC had was different from what the ministry had, was different from the other one. So what exactly is the final draft that is going to parliament? We need to see that, and we want the IEC to help us with that, or maybe the Ministry of Justice rather. It is only fair that we, the stakeholders, should get access to this. We also urge the government to understand also IEC is also facing challenges. They have a funding gap, obviously. The budget that they presented to Parliament was cut, and that is really giving IEC problems. So we really want the government to urgently look at this thing with funding for the IEC and their budget, and make sure it gives them enough funding to be able to carry out a proper voter registration and election process. Now, they should be given the right resources to be able to do their work. When it comes to the issue of IEC as well, finally, we urge the IEC to engage more with CSOs, political parties, and the media constantly, so that everybody is on the same page. That makes it easier, that brings about transparency. The final issue, or the penultimate issue, has to do with the deportation. Why is this important? There have been recent policy contradictions between Banjul and Berlin. Banjul is saying, well, there's a moratorium on deportations. Berlin comes out, well, we are baffled. We're not aware of any moratorium. As far as we are concerned, flights are coming to Banjul. So what is happening? Which is which? Are the boys being deported or not? We need to know, the public needs to know. Because these boys have rights as well, or these girls who are victims of this deportation. Because the government is saying there's a moratorium, Germany is saying no, there is no moratorium. In fact, Berlin said there has not been any suspension of flights as far as they are concerned. And they've also confirmed their intention to operate a repatriation flight on the said date, that is sometime next month. So the government should clear the air. When the government speaks, you hardly get worried. It shows there is disharmony in this cabinet. This serious disharmony. I don't think ministers talk to each other. Why? Because the Minister of Information, Ibrahim Silla, was quoted together with Ibrahim Sankare as saying that they will not comment on the issue of deportation. Why? Because they don't have any information concerning the matter. Now, the spokesperson of the government and the Minister of Information is saying they have no information about such a very important policy area. That shows that the ministers, there is no harm, they're not talking to each other. Something is definitely wrong in the cabinet, and that is very, very, very worrying. In fact, let me quote Sankare. He said, to be honest with you, my position about deportation is that I will never, ever make a comment about them until and unless the Ministry of Foreign Affairs briefs me, and so I know what I'm going to talk about. Then something is wrong. That shows that there is disharmony in this government, because this is a matter that actually transcends the entire length and breadth of the Gambia. And it is sensitive. What is sensitive about this? Government either has a policy or don't have a policy. Let us know what the policy is. Are you going to allow deportations to happen? No. If you're not going to allow it to happen, let us know. One thing is clear. We urge the government to really consider and put a moratorium on the deportation of these boys. We are in the middle of a pandemic. Gambia lacks the health infrastructure capacity to deal with those in the Gambia today if there is a total outbreak. Bringing others from outside to come and join us is really dangerous. And I think what the Gambia government should focus on now is to have a serious dialogue with the German and other European government. Italy is also planning to deport. Switzerland is also planning to deport. Currently, we have a lot of young people in this country frustrated with no jobs. You want to bring more young people who've been traumatized during their journey to the back way. After all they faced. Now, what the Gambia government should do is have a serious dialogue with the EU countries. Tell them, look, we cannot at this moment, we are not in a position to receive any of these boys or girls. What do? Integrate them into your societies. Build their skills. What we can do now is to make sure we stop the phenomena from happening. But those who are there, we need to go and find out, because they are suffering a lot. Some are facing mental problems. Some have become drug addicts. Some in fact, you fear them. Every day you hear news that one has died. Because they are going through a lot. I think what the government is to support them. Send a team there to support them. But also, bringing them back is not also helpful because we lack the social institutions to integrate them. Some of them come back traumatized. Recently, you read the news, there are stories. One of them in Brikama, one back where Tony killed his father at night. So we don't have the social institutions when they get them through counseling to help them. We don't have them. They just bring them. There was one who in fact could not get a fare from the airport to go back home. One immigration officer who was on duty at night paid for his fare to go to Brikama. So when do you bring them? What do you do for them? So I think we should really revisit our policy insofar as deportation is concerned. Finally, the COVID-19. That is the folly of the century. I've never seen such an unserious press release since I started following politics some 35, 40 years ago from any government around the world. See a government violate every COVID-19 rule that exists, comes up with no coherent, well-defined COVID-19 prevention strategy of its own to prepare for the second wave. Does everything that they want to do. And now they are coming to say, in light of the worrisome trajectory of a new wave of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, the Gambia government hereby suspends the issuing of new police permits for all parties. All parties. After Wale Seka has already played on Vivian. You want to ban it now. Huh? Music festivals, political events, after you've done your rallies, and after on the 6th you are doing a rally in Basse. And all forms of social gatherings, after you've done your own kulios already. Effective the 8th. I think Gambia has a new coronavirus variant, I think, which will invade our shores on the 8th. Does it make sense? They make Gambia the laughing stock of the world. Other countries are laughing at us. People are locking down immediately. In fact, there are others who are easing now. They've already locked down, they're easing now. You are pushing the lockdown to the 8th because you've already have your planned itinerary of events that you want them to pass first before you bring this into effect. This shows one thing. The government is not serious in fighting the coronavirus pandemic. They are doing this to show the world that they are acting. And that is dangerous and bad leadership. They should be talking about vaccines now. Senegal had about 200,000 doses yesterday. They got it from China. What is our government doing for us to get vaccines? I'm not even hearing nothing about vaccines in this country. Huh? So it's sad. And also Ebola, we've just had Guinea-Conakry, there's an outbreak. What is the statement? What is the strategy? Having Ebola mixing with COVID-19 is a dangerous mix. What should we do? Gambia and Guinea is not very far from each other. There's travel every day between these two countries. So obviously, those are the points that we want to raise today. Obviously, we'll be happy to have questions, for you to ask questions. We'll just end with, on one note. Recently, we've seen a rise in political intolerance in this country. Insults, counter-insults, physical abuse, the burning of T-shirts. We condemn all forms of violence, being physical or verbal in the political space. We think we should be mature enough to be tolerant and understand that people have a right to support whatever political party they want to support out of conviction. So I think we should tone down a bit. This is election year. I think all of us have a responsibility to play with the political leaders and you, the media, civil society, to educate our people, to really set bright examples that politics is about ideas. Politics is about finding solutions to our complex problems. Politics is about serving and not about insults and counter-insults and mudslingings and whatever. It doesn't make sense. And burning of T-shirts and physical assaults because we belong to a different party. So that is going to be our message for Gambians, that let us be united. We have one common purpose. We have the same challenges. We face the same poverty. We face the same lack of water. We face the same lack of electricity. Therefore, we have bigger problems that we should focus on and make sure that we are transparent. I think that's it, except if you guys want me to do it in the local languages. That's fine? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ismaila Cisse. The issues raised here are very, very important. That are issues really important to Gambia and Gambians that we should be discussing. I often say that we are fond of discussing everything in this country but the issues, the real issues. And I think these are issues that we should continue talking about, we should continue discussing on, we should continue holding ourselves account to ensure the right things are done. The right systems are in place, the right procedures and processes are in place so that we have a very, very good country that everybody can live in peace and harmony. Like my party leader just said, we need to tone down. It's election year. There's no need to fight, insult, vilify each other. At the end of the day, we should all work for the common good of this country, the interest of this country. We will move on to question and answer. I'm sure you guys will have questions on behalf of your viewers. We'll just do it in an orderly manner. You introduce yourself, which media house you're representing here, then followed by the question you want to ask. Yes. I'll start with DJ.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Khadija Tijao. I work with the Chronicle newspaper. So my first questions, I have multiple questions, but I will ask the first one. So we have less than 10 months to go before elections. What is going to be the most important and highly contested elections post-dictatorship in the country? So what is CA doing or has done to ensure that young people, especially those people in the rural areas, are involved in the process to register to vote in the coming elections?
Well, I think that's a very brilliant question. We've put up a strategy in place to engage young people. In fact, one of the reasons of the tour is to kill two birds with one stone, meaning that even though we are going to sensitize, we are also going to engage young people to emphasize to them the importance of them being registered, because it's about their future, it's about them. They should not let anybody decide their future for them. So what we are going to do, we have a strategy in place. We are going to engage young people. In fact, why we had to put on hold some of our activities in terms of voter engagement with the young people was because the entire process was postponed. Once we know a date, we'll resume those activities. So we are going to engage young people because we think that the young people now must really get a voter's card to vote. So we have a strategy for that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
All of us have multiple questions, but we're asking one by one. Thank you very much. You touched on the issue of fishery sector, and then you highlighted problems there. So I just want two things that you don't mention. The position of the government is whenever they caught people violating going in excess, they negotiate. They don't go take them to court. What is the CA thinking about that issue? That is first. And secondly, what type of fisheries agreement do you think the government should go?
Well, I think the first question, laws should be followed. What is the purpose of having a law that you end up negotiating outside of the law? It doesn't make sense. It's either, if they think that law is not fit for purpose, it's to go and amend the law and make it fit for purpose, than not ignoring the law and then you do your own negotiation. This is a recipe for corruption, because we don't know how those negotiations take place. We don't know what happens in those negotiation rooms. So we would never engage in negotiations if people violate our territorial waters. What we will do is to follow the law to the fullest. If we think that law is not good for purpose, we'll reform it and amend it so that it's fit for purpose. But we will not engage in private and side negotiations. The second thing is, which contract do we think is best? Let me tell you something. First, we need to, when the CA government comes to power, we'll revisit all these contracts to see whether due process was followed, to establish whether it is in the interest of the Gambia. From our own point of view, we think that our marine resources is a key, is a potential resource to create employment for our young people. Therefore, we will look for public-private partnership and make sure we take ownership of our marine resources and build the right infrastructure and the systems and the strategies to ensure that the fisheries sector really benefits Gambians. It doesn't make sense if you can have the capacity to do fishing on your own. You bring in you give the contracts to foreign vessels, and in fact, some of these foreign vessels in fact break the laws, international law. They use very, very small nets, which is not allowed. They just do indiscriminate fishing. When they put their nets on the sea, they even catch the small fish that they don't need, because the nets are not fit for purpose. They are not standard nets, and they get away with it. So they waste a whole lot of young fish, which is really bad. So we will make sure that we take ownership of our marine resources. It's one of our most important resources. I'm not saying we will not give licenses to foreign vessels, but the majority part, Gambians will really take ownership of the fishing industry.
Okay. Gambia Talents.
Good morning. I am Aisha Jaro from Gambian Talents TV. Doctor, in your statement, you made mention of embarking on a voters card awareness campaign. Recently, we have seen the government press release pertaining condemning all political and social gatherings. What is CA's stand on that? Are you still going ahead with your project, or are you going to obey the government press release?
Well, actually, the press release is very easy. It says that any gathering that requires a police permit, that is what is banned. Our events, our sensitization tours, our town halls don't really require a police permit. So we will continue with our voter sensitization tour. But we'll also make sure once we are on it, we follow guidelines in terms of social distancing, in terms of putting on masks, in terms of hand washing. We'll do that to make sure that those who we are going to engage, their lives are not put in danger by transmission of the disease. So obviously,
yes,
so obviously, yes, we'll go ahead with our campaign in a very, what word would I use? In a very professional manner, if I may use that word.
Good. And how do you feel about yesterday Independence celebrated in Eloki while international artist was performing at the Independence Stadium, and government just had their party launching less than 3 weeks back?
It once again demonstrates the contradictory nature of this government's approach to policy, and that I've just been arguing here. And that makes Gambia a laughing stock. There is no coherent, you don't know what's happening with this government. So everything is just contradiction upon contradiction. You ban the inter-school sports for kids, you said because of coronavirus. Now you allow Senegalese artists to come and play, and Gambian artists to come and play mega concerts. You do a mega launching, and you say now for the independence celebration, low key. So that is no, the reason why that happened, the government lacks a well-defined, coherent strategy from the onset to say, you know what, these are the guidelines for Gambia. These are the measures that we are going to take for Gambia. Everything is, the framework is there. So anybody that wants to do anything has to know but there is no framework, there are no guidelines for the second wave, there is nothing. So everything, it depends on the whims and caprices of a government, who decides who should play, who should gather, and who should not gather. And I think that is the tragedy here.
Thank you very much. DJ, you want to do your second question?
Doctor, you made a mention of there is no special prosecutor in the country.
For corruption?
Yes, for corruption. And I once listened to a Coffee Time with Peter Gomez, where Sankara made mention of there is application that was put out there, but quote unquote, no Gambian is coming forward. I think there is no qualified Gambian to apply for the post. That is quote unquote, according to Sankara. So what do you make of that?
Well, let me tell you something. We have judges in the Magisterial Gambian. You don't have to have a Gambian to be a special prosecutor for corruption issues. You can take a non-Gambian. We live in a very globalized world. I don't even believe the fact that there is no Gambian who is qualified. I mean, you have to pay people. You have to give incentives. If you want to bring people to do a job, you have to pay them. And maybe the package is not good. Maybe there is no political will, so they make the package so weak that nobody applies. Maybe it's calculated. But I think if they're really serious, and they want a serious person, a qualified, competent prosecutor, who specializes in prosecuting corruption cases, believe me, they'll get it.
Thank you very much.
I still follow to my question. I asked what type of fisheries argument do you think the government should go for? So now that the CA has a strategy, that is your manifesto, what type of policies do you think the government should come to take people back to the fisheries sector? Because, like for example, I've done many stories from Tangier and other places. I've done research on them, and then I found out that Gambians are not even, they don't even own boats. So what type of things do you think the government should do to help Gambians? You know, if like CA, you have plans like that to help Gambians own boats, these vessels that are coming, these 41 EU vessels, I didn't know today Gambia will not get anything from it. So what type?
You know, there are two levels here. We have the industrial fishing, we have the artisanal fishing, and we need to have a strategy how we approach both. Many young people want to be engaged, they want jobs. We need to make it attractive, because now what's happening with these small artisans, they are competing with these industrial boats, and therefore it's not profitable. So what you do is you make sure the laws are implemented, the policies are very right, but also you make sure that you create a policy which makes it attractive for young people to engage in artisanal fishing by providing training for them, but also by giving them startup capital to buy a boat and giving them some kind of incentive so they can go into the business. When it comes to big boats, I heard the minister saying the last time that there is no Gambian engaged in industrial fishing. That's why I say government can have partnerships with private investors to buy industrial fishing boats and make sure we get a fish processing plant in the Gambia. We have to process our own fish to supply our markets, supply our supermarkets. Then the rest we send to the outside world. Why can't we make our own sardines here? Why can't we process our own fish products in the Gambia? That provides employment. If you have if you go to the Kombosa, the Katong, Gunjur, Sanyang, Tanje, that is where the coast is. You get a massive fish processing plant there to make sure that at least we catch our fish, we process it, we supply. I think that should be our approach through public-private partnerships. And then for the smaller artisanal fishermen, you make it attractive. You provide startup packages for young people who want to engage in fishing. Because why they want? Because it's not profitable now as we speak. But you need to make it attractive. You need to raise awareness about it and provide training for young people. Give them the materials they need and the access to the cash they need, and make sure that they start their own fishing and make it attractive. But also provide cold storage for women who are mostly active also in the fishing business operation. Most of them, they buy fish, they cannot keep it because they don't have a cold storage, and they are complaining about that.
Thank you very much.
My name is Binta Yara and I work for TV. My first question is, we all know this is election year, and of course political rallies requires police permit to go on. If this has to continue, the restrictions, if they have to continue, how do you think this is going to affect elections this year?
Well, massively. Politics is about mobilization, especially campaigning. It's about mass mobilization of people. If the restrictions continue, it will affect the ability of political parties to mobilize and gather people. But like I said, what the COVID-19 has taught us is to be innovative and to come up with new ways of doing things. So therefore, perhaps we could do the politicking without the mass gathering, but yet that would not stop politics. Politics is not only about mass gatherings. So I think what political parties need to do now is to always find strategies that can allow them to steal politics without attracting large crowds. It's about being innovative. The COVID-19 cannot stop us from doing what we are supposed to do. It's about being smart, about it, being innovative, and coming up with new ideas in how to engage politically without gathering large crowds like rallies and so on and so forth. So that's up to every political party to come up with their own strategy in engaging the electorate, sending the message without gathering large crowds.
I have a follow-up question on that. Do you think this is a way that government is using to gain weight before the election?
Well, that's what many people insinuate, and the manner in which they've done it, obviously, it's the writing is on the wall. You did your rally, you did everything that we are supposed to do. You did your congress. Now you are going to another congress in Basse on the 6th. You wait until after that. Now you said there is a lockdown. It means that obviously it's fog ñu ñaan jota rek.
If I can ask one more, I don't know.
Can we take Yusufa, then we come back to second round, please? Thank you.
My name is Yusufa from Gambian. We just have 10 months before we go in for election. And right now, public are speculating that the government's plan is even not to conduct the election in December 4th. So, do you think that's the case?
Well, like you said, I think you used the right word, speculating.
Yeah.
These are just, let them stop at speculating. Never in the political history of this country that an election has been postponed. We've seen elections in countries during the pandemic, both in Africa and outside of Africa, in the US, in Malawi, in Guinea-Bissau, in Kenya to some extent, in Mali, in Ghana. So for me, I see no reason why there will be no elections in December. December 4th, Ibrahim is your name? Yusufa. Ila carte keso parendi, ila carte parendi. Yeta carte fay December 4th. Disa carte fay be kelade. Malo monete kelade. December 4th ni ma bay. Carte fay wata bay la.
My second question. Yesterday at the Independent Ground, President Barrow gushed about his government taking feedback from the public. Do you really believe that?
No. Politics, I mean, what feedback? They are very reactionary to feedback. In fact, when you give feedback, they see you as a critic, as an enemy. So they are not very thick-skinned. They don't allow feedback. They just want to hear good things. But obviously, these speeches are speeches. They are choreographed to look nice, but in reality, that is not the case.
Last question. You talked about corruption. President Barrow also said that his government is standing against all forms of corruption and injustice.
Well, the evidence speaks for itself. Whether that's what's happening, for me, I haven't seen any strategy in terms of how they want to fight corruption. Two, the anti-corruption bill is still languishing, gathering dust. Why has it not been passed? The Freedom of Information bill is still gathering dust. Why it's not been passed? And that is why for us in our manifesto, I think these are some of the things we have to build strong institutions to fight corruption in this country. We have to make sure the Anti-Corruption Commission is established and given sweeping powers to ensure that they do their work. I mean, from the onset, we knew this government would never be serious about fighting corruption. When the agreement was that they all have to declare their assets publicly, what did they do? They later changed their mind. No, we are going to declare it privately. I knew something was wrong then. Why are you hiding? So they are not serious in fighting corruption. Again, like I said, it's just rhetoric.
Yeah. Okay. This is the last year for the transition. Then the president came up with several promises, but most important is the review of all bad criminal laws and then repeating them. And now you raise the issue of access to information, and the media is here. We still have those bad laws, the draconian laws. And then there was a committee also established by the government to review all those bad, and they made their recommendations. And now there has been a change of minister, and the minister before was saying the government is actually committed to that tax, but still nothing has been done. And now we have not more than 10 months before election. So how do you see this transition? When there is no reform of the bad laws, do you see the transition as a success?
I mean, in general, like I said, the transition has failed. Anybody who tells you anything else is just telling you a story. It has failed. Everything they promised in the transition never came to pass. The 3-year transition failed. There is no constitution yet. Security sector reform, not done. The TRRC recommendations, not the CRC, no, the Janet Commission recommendations are not fully implemented. Civil service reform is not yet done. So the only thing that has been reformed is some few people, as they reform themselves for sure. They become millionaires overnight. That's the only that has happened. If people they reform themselves, but the rest, so the transition has failed. They even promised that, I remember at, I think it was point 3 of this MOU, not the agenda of the coalition, was that they are going to repeal the Public Order Act. Within 3 months of coming into power, the Public Order Act is still intact. This is a failed transition. It's gone. It's been aborted. It's been hijacked. So there is nothing left of it. So what we should do now, to pick up the bits and pieces and move on, is to ensure we pressure on this government to have a new constitution before elections, and then make sure we go to election with a new legal framework, and we get a fresh start with a new government, a more serious government, a more visionary government in 2021 to move this country forward.
Thank you. Dejan?
Okay. So the Janet Commission recommendations and the white paper, everything has gone down the drain after spending millions of taxpayers' money. Now we have the TRRC on the way, and they will be done very soon. So what is CA going to do to make sure that some of the recommendations that is coming out of TRRC is going to be implemented?
Well,
to help the victim in terms of reparations and amnesty and among other issues.
The only thing we can do is when we come to power in 2021, we'll make sure that any recommendation put forward by the TRRC is implemented to the latter. But if it's another government, well, we cannot do anything that much. It depends on which government is going to be in power. But as far as he is concerned, we believe in the process. We think the process has integrity. And I think we as a party, when we are in government, will make sure we implement the TRRC recommendations.
Okay, finally, on the new round of the consultation on the draft constitution is to begin very soon.
Yes.
So what is CS take on that?
Well, our position is very clear. We are saying that we need a new constitution. That is why we took part in the consultations, in the dialogue. So we are working together with International IDEA, together with the eminent person, Goodluck Jonathan, and with other political parties also, to make sure we find common ground, which will help us get a new constitution as soon as possible. So we are part of that process.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So most people, suggest that these are ways, the president is using to gain power, or in fact to stand on his feet when it comes to politics or elections next year.
Is using what?
Using these strategies to make sure that he is good when it comes to elections in order for him to win. Now, what is the political party, or what other political party is going to do if, for instance, let's say he do this strategy, and then next time also when he has a rally, he open doors and do the rallies and then close the doors again for you guys. Do you have any plans of coming out the street, maybe demonstrate or protest? Because I've heard party supporters, I spoke to you that they were suggesting that the party leaders should allow them to come out on the streets and protest.
Well, for me, coming out into the streets and protest should be the last solution. It helps nobody. There are mediums of engagement that we could use force to make sure that the playing field is level. Through the IPC, obviously, Inter-Party Committee, the President's party is a member of the IPC. Through engagement as well. That is why when we had our last, the Center for Research, Policy and Research organized a convergence a couple of days ago when we talked about the future of the Constitution. And I said, look, one of the problems we are facing in this country is that we, the politicians, don't want to see eye to eye. At this stage in our country, very fragile, nothing will be wrong if we sit as politicians on the table and discuss a common way forward. You have President Barrow, you have Lawyer Dabo, you have myself, you have Mama Kande, you have Abakari, Tombong Jata, Honorable, you have my Fati, you have Ahmad Ba, you have Henry Gomez. Sit on a table. And I have never seen that happen. All these choli, ñoomi neen ñuy waxtaan ñu wax Barrow yow lan nga bëgga ñun lan lañ bëgga ñu talk, at least we'll find a common path forward. But once we are not talking to each other, we see each other as enemies, as hostile enemies, it cannot work. So for me, obviously, discussions has to happen. For us, CA, what we'll do is now to engage first. That we bring the president account, bring that to the attention of the IEC, bring it to the attention of partners, use the IPC, engage, and I hope we'll get something from engagement. But for us, going into the street demonstrating, for us, it's something that we don't really. It's not forced resort, to be honest.
Are your doors open for coalition?
That's a very difficult question. Right now, we're not thinking about coalitions. We are thinking about selling our agenda to the Gambian people. That's what we are focusing on. We did not form a party to join a coalition. We formed a party to come up with an agenda which is innovative and realistic and relevant to the Gambian people. Sell that agenda to the Gambian people with the hope that it was the mandate to govern and will transform this country. And our eyes are fixed on that. Selling that agenda to the Gambian people with the hope that they'll give us the mandate. Right now, coalitions are not on our itinerary as we speak.
Yes, final.
Go ahead.
There's land troubles in the country. Then the government does not even have a proper land commission. The land commission that we have is just advisory to the ministry. There is no land commission, and the land problems are becoming too much. And then we have also the growing number of estate agencies, real estate sector. And the government is always talking that they will regulate the sector, but nothing has been done. So what do you think the government should do to address this land problem?
First, to regulate the sector, the estate agent. That sector must be regulated. That's one. Two, to create a permanent land commission with powers. Three, to digitize land registration, to identify, and in fact, first is to have a moratorium on the buying and selling of all land first, until we get our acts together. By digitization, what you do is you give every land in this country is accounted for and given a particular code, which is in the system. And also revisit the issue of alcalo selling land. There must be a proper institution where the buying and selling of land should take place. Everything is systematic. But you buy alcalo land from the alcalo with a very paper that he just stamped. Sometimes the alcalo's son will steal the stamp and the paper and sell land to somebody. These are the ones that are causing problems. So with the alcalos, if they want to benefit, what we should be considered is that, look, take it away from the alcalos, give it to a well-qualified, competent institution that deals with it, and then you say that every 2% is called alcalo tax. Alcalo still gets his money. Call the alcalo tax. If the land is $100, you give to the alcalo. Because why the alcalos are insisted they have to sell the land? Because of the monetary aspect of it, isn't it? But I think we need to really centralize land allocation here, land distribution in this country. Everything is digitized. Every land has a code and a number, so that this, because what the main problem is that one part will sell land to 3 different people, and they'll meet there. Now, the estate agents are not regulated. Urban planning is non-existent. Physical planning, they have challenges, you understand, but they're not doing their job properly. Why? Because people will come and buy a whole plot of land here, kilometers of acres of land, and they start developing it without thinking of future generations, the welfare of future generations. Leave space for schools, leave space for green parks, leave space for clinics, leave space for football fields, youth development hubs, not just build. Only stores and apartments they'll build. So you realize the whole community, there is no space for the football field, there is no space for the clinic, no space for a market, no space for anything, and it doesn't make sense. Therefore, we really need to regulate and control, and physical planning must do its job, and we must come up with a proper urban planning strategy to ensure that whatever we do, the welfare of future generations are considered.
Thank you very much. Okay, Yusufa.
Oh, okay. Dr. Caesar, not more recently electricity and mobile environment, even within common just to independent and Adam correct.
Mundo.
Yeah, Mama Square. I don't kind of pump.
Kurang far. You know, sinya flada bekela.
So like Kurang was like it's very concerning. So what special recommendation do you have?
No, ya long kurang nying abenya men wolong ko Gambia la infrastructure nying na kurang infrastructure distribution and transmission ke wi ko totales capacity nyim fanang nka kurang men generate aning ka distribute nyaming among align. There's no alignment there. So, and we have old generators. But also you have to understand also that the energy needs of our people have increased like so much compared to the past 20 years. That is why planning is important in government. What you do is you plan, you look at demographic trends and look at the population and say, today we are 2 million people. In 20 years time we'll be 4 million people. You start preparing energy needs of those 24 million people now. What has happened is that we have not really expanded capacity, but our population has increased. The urban Gambia has now 60% of our live in urban Gambia. So the electricity capacity cannot feed. And now our lifestyles have also changed. Before, every compound will have only one TV and one radio. But now you have 2 laptops, you have phones, you have all these important gadgets, you have microwaves, you have kettles, you have fast screen TVs. So what has happened is that our energy consumption has outpaced our energy generation. That is why you see now we are getting energy from Senelec, we are getting energy from Car Power. Now, if Car Power has gone back and Senelec closes, then we are beginning to have problems. Now, what we need to do now is to reform NAWEC itself. Sometimes I wonder what is the wisdom in having both water and electricity in this institution, which is struggling to even provide electricity. And you go to rural Gambia, most communities lack water. You go to a particular village, 600 people, no single water source, not even a single one. They move to the next villages to wash their clothes. Some don't even shower for 2-3 days because they don't have a single drop of water. And they live in the Gambia. So I think that government should be serious about what should be the way forward. And NAWEC is over bloated. I think NAWEC is one of the biggest employers of all the state-owned institutions. And they need to also make sure that the transportation of fuel from the depot to the different generators should also be controlled, because sometimes it's even lack of fuel. Some light goes off. They have old generators. So I think we need to come up with a proper strategy. In the short term, you need generators. In the long term, we should go for green energy. I mean, green energy, this takes long term to implement in terms of solar, wind, and hydro. But in the short term, I think we need to come up with proper good generators that are well serviced. We make sure that make NAWEC more efficient, and also we renovate our distribution and transmission cables, because what happened is that there's a lot of leakage and wastage. If Car Power produces, let's say, 30 megawatts, believe me, that 30 is not all used. Some go to waste. We lose at least some of it through leakage in our So if we are paying for something, I think we are paying Car Power how many? How much are we paying Car Power? I think it's $3 million a month, something like that. I can't remember. But imagine you are paying for a service, because Car Power, what they do is to generate. Their business is not to distribute and transmit. That's our job. So when they generate, whether you distribute and transmit or not, that is your problem. You'll have to pay. And we are paying, and we are not even distributing all that they generate. And that's a big waste for the Gambia. And we pay in dollars. That is why the economy is bad. It's like we pay in CFA. That is why there's a lack of foreign currency in this country. And I think we need to revisit all these things, because they're not in the interest of the Gambia.
In that case, Mujimaka argued that it should be privatized. It should be privatized. Because you know, maybe now private more block, but then I'm managing block.
No, I mean, for me, but these are two schools of thought. Model ko ka privatize, model ko estarman sekunda block. Min kuma dolon ko ya reform, yake more efficient. In my view, I don't think, in fact, the president should elect and pick who is the director of NAWEC. They should advertise that post to competent Gambians and give them performance task to say, look, within 6 months, so that Nima ke buy. But for me, I mean, Gambia could privatize, but would that solve the problem? Will it solve the energy needs? I think there can be an arrangement whereby there could be public-private partnerships. I wouldn't go for total privatization, obviously. For now, I think things like energy, these are strategic needs of the people. These are strategic sectors. So I don't think it should be totally privatized. But I think Gambian government can have a partnership with private investors to come and look at the whole entire sector, where government is still there, but at the same time it is run as a business and profit-minded. For now, it is not. And now electricity is very expensive in this country. I think in the West African sub-region, we are next to Liberia, and which is unfair, because why? NAWEC is inefficient. The demand of energy has far surpassed the supply of energy, and that makes it too expensive. I think we need to look at the institution, do some institutional reforms within NAWEC, and then change the way governance. In fact, we need to change the whole governance structure of NAWEC, the way it is governed now, we don't think it makes sense.
My last question has to do with the internet coverage. First, the megabytes is very expensive, and the internet connection is very, very bad. We have just seen like a few moments ago, President Barrow himself had to meet his ECOWAS summit because the internet was not available in the country. So, and according to media report, Pura said they don't have any control over the issue of megabytes when it comes to pricing or the GSM companies. So what is your take on that?
I think Pura has. They said they don't have capacity. That's one thing. They have powers. They don't have the capacity is one thing, but they have the powers to do it because there is what they call the consumer protection laws, which are there. If you go read the consumer protection laws, it tells you that customers, when they pay for a service, they must get what they pay for. If they don't, we have to punish those who give them the service. And I think it's Pura that should be knocking at those doors. If they lack the capacity now to do that, the technical capacity, we can understand that. I think now what the government needs to do is to give them the technical capacity to make sure that consumers are protected. Because you cannot take your $10, buy data, and it doesn't serve you. That's not right. You need to protect consumers. With the whole thing with the internet, there are many stories. They say the ACE cable has been cut, but there is no backup. How can I mean, internet in this day and age, it's like you not having nerves in your system because it makes the country work. The banking sector, the finance sector, the government, public sector institutions, education institutions, capital transfers. Nothing works if there is no internet. It is vital that there must be a backup. And only NAWEC has a backup. And because only NAWEC has not NAWEC, Gamtel has a backup. And because only Gamtel has a backup, all these other GSM operators piggyback. Well, that is why internet, even when it exists, because it's not enough for everybody. I think all these GSM should get proper backup so that if this one is not working, there's a backup. It's like having a generator. If a company cannot go without electricity, and then you rely on the national grid, you get a backup generator because you cannot go without electricity. So when the national grid has a problem, the generator comes on automatically. We must find ways to have a backup. This cannot go on. It's dangerous, very dangerous, and it's a national security threat and an economic sabotage. If a country should stay for a couple of hours without access to the internet, not only that, we don't even have access to international calls. It means that at that period, no information goes out of this country, no information comes inside this country, and we think that is really dangerous and must be looked at as soon as possible.
A follow-up to that, yes, a lot of people have seen the frequent internet blackout in the country as a way of government having hands in order to future plan in cheating the future election. But is your reaction or take on that?
Well, I don't think so. I think some of these allegations also are exaggerated. I wouldn't see any logic behind that. Stopping the internet now to steal elections in 10 months' time. If it was very close to elections, then perhaps now
They said they are doing it now so that they will have a way to themselves in the future.
No, but putting internet, I don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't take that route anyway. For now, I wouldn't take that. I'll be very cautious with those conspiracy theories for now.
So, I just want to take one last question, my lady. I just want to take you back. You said right now, CA is not ready for coalition, but a lot of political experts are always saying that in 2021, no one single political party can bring Adambaro's government down. So, should any case there should be a coalition, what will be CA's position? Are you ready to join another political party or other political party join you?
You said some political experts are saying that no one that is the political. Yeah, that is the view.
Political party cannot bring Adambaro's government.
That is the view of those.
That there should be an alliance between political parties.
No, what I'm saying is that is the view of those experts. It doesn't mean that it is the right view. What I said is very simple. As we speak today, coalition is not on our agenda. As we speak today, what is on our agenda is going out to the Gambian people, selling them our ideas, telling them that we've diagnosed the sickness of this country, and these are the injections we have to cure it. We have 4 injections for Gambia, as prescribed by our manifesto, our 4 pillars. We believe that by the time we reach the 3rd injection, the country should be awakened from the coma. However, what I'm trying to explain to you is that for now, 10 months is a long time in politics. It took 3 months before election for the last coalition to be formed. Anything is possible. We're not ruling out anything. But what we are saying for now, our minds are not focused on coalition building. Our minds are focused on building our base, selling our message with the hope that people will buy our agenda and vote for CA in 2021 and give us a mandate to govern going forward.
Thank you very much. You wanted to ask a question? No, okay. Thank you very much. Everybody here, our wonderful partners in development. Our minds right now are not on any coalition building, but to build our base, grassroots engagement, grassroots recruitment, and ensure that our agenda is put forward to citizens to win their hearts so that they can vote for Citizens Alliance come 2021. It has been an engaging 2 hours, a very, very interactive 2 hours. I believe all media houses present here, your viewers have been duly informed. Your viewers have listened keenly and understood all the issues, the pertinent issues that have been raised here. So now what I will do is to challenge all of us here, all media houses, to go out there. The issues that are raised are very, very important. It is often says, anything that doesn't challenge you will not change you. And it needs to challenge us. All these issues needs to challenge us living here so that we go out there and do a follow-up to investigate on these issues and hold the different institutions, the different people, the different entities, hold them to account to ensure that they do the right thing. That's what I will challenge all of us to go ahead and do, and also our viewers. Let it not just stop here. The purpose of Citizens Alliance calling for this press conference is to get our listeners, our supporters, Gambians, and the whole Gambia informed about issues that really matter.